Hello Year 9, this is lesson 16. Now we're going to do some exam practice. I'm going to talk you through the whole thing. The objective of today's lesson is to be able to interpret a GCSE question correctly and identify what it is that you need to use in your answer. So we're working on challenges and opportunities in the hot desert. You've learnt a lot of information over the past few lessons. I'm going to bring it all together now in an exam practice question. So please write today's date and this title in your book and then pause to do this quick quiz. Just write the answers, please. Now check your answers and mark them. Right, this is the exam question that we are going to dissect. We are going to take it apart and we're going to see what we need to build an answer. So I'd like you to write this down and listen carefully. Also write down how many marks there are. Now, before we begin answering, let's have a really good look at this exam question, and I'm calling this a little checklist because at least in your head you should be doing this with every exam question that you come across from now on. So, how many marks? Well, there's 9 marks, and how's it going to be marked? It's going to be marked in levels. Because it's a 9-mark question in geography, they are always marked in levels. We've seen levels before. Level 1 will get 1, 2 or 3 marks and it's a basic answer. Level 2 gets 4, 5 or 6 and it's a clear answer. Level 3 gets 7, 8 or 9 and it's a detailed answer. That's what we're always aiming for. So let's have a look at that in a bit more detail to really understand what basic, clear and detailed really mean for an exam answer. This is what an examiner uses to mark your work. So I've copied this exactly from the exam board's mark scheme. And you can see the difference between level 1, 2 and 3. For instance, level 1 demonstrates limited knowledge of locations, places and processes. Level 2 demonstrates clear knowledge, but level 3 demonstrates comprehensive and accurate knowledge. So what we're doing here is we're moving through to comprehensive means everything is included. And accurate means, of course, everything is correct. So for this question, we're not just going to say the far desert, we're also going to say where the far desert is, because that's going to demonstrate, it's going to show your accurate, your correct knowledge of locations and places. Well, we must use some place names later. Let's go on to that second point there. For level 1, shows slight geographical understanding of the interrelationships between people, environments and processes. For level 2, shows some geographical understanding. And for level 3, shows thorough geographical understanding of the interrelationships between peoples, environments and processes. So what we're aiming to demonstrate or show to the examiner is not only that you know about it, but that you understand. You understand why the things that happen in the far desert are important to people and how the people and their environment are connected. Because remember, this whole thing about the living world, we've seen all the way through that there's an interconnectivity, there's interrelationships between these things. People are interdependent on the environment, just as plants and vegetation are interdependent on the environment. Then there's the application of knowledge. Level 1 is a limited application of knowledge and understanding. Level 2 is reasonable application of knowledge and understanding, and level 3 is thorough. So something that is thorough has a full explanation. It's got a full description followed by a full explanation. Remember the difference between description and explanation. Description is telling us what it's like, and explanation is saying why it's like that. And then when we're evaluating the extent to which the hot desert provides opportunities and challenges. So if we're doing this in a thorough way, we're giving lots of examples. We're leaving no stone unturned, if you like. Back to the checklist. So what type of question is it? This question is a to what extent question. That means that you must begin your answer with a sentence that includes the phrase to a large extent, or to a small extent, maybe to a limited extent, but you've got to include that part. Otherwise, the examiner says, well, you didn't actually answer the question, because the question was, to what extent does it? Now, it's a great idea if you also conclude with a statement too. Now, the reason why I'm asking you to do it both at the beginning and at the end is called bookending, is because when you're actually in the exam situation, sometimes nerves get the better of you because you're rushing and you're really keen to make sure that you do as well as you possibly can. Sometimes you might forget. So if we get into a good routine of doing it at the beginning and at the end, then there's a better chance that we'll be able to remember at least one of those things. On to the case study. Well, this particular question calls for a hot desert environment you have studied. Therefore, your second sentence will begin, I have studied the Thar Desert, which is, don't just tell me it's a hot desert, say where it is, because remember, you are trying to show a comprehensive and accurate knowledge and understanding. Now, what information do you need to include? You need to include both opportunities and challenges. Let's say that you did a fabulous answer which was just about opportunities. However good it was, it would only get maybe 5 marks top. It wouldn't get any more. And you know, it probably only get a level 1. Or the same if you only wrote about challenges. The question says provide both opportunities and challenges, therefore you must talk about both. So in the grey box at the bottom is a sort of idea of how you would do this. You'd state a challenge, describe it in detail, develop the point and explain why that thing is challenging, because that is showing how people are affected by that thing. Give another challenge, give some more detail, develop that with some explanation too. Then give an opportunity, describe it in detail, include the name of the place where this takes place, because we are aiming for level 3. We want detail in there. And part of what the examiner is looking for is that you have a thorough geographical understanding. In geography, the place where something happens is very important. Just like in history, the time, the date when something happened is very important. In geography, it's the place that is so important. So, I've put on describe, 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 explain, 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 because those are the things that are so important and always in detail. Now I'd like you to use this writing frame, but don't pause now to write it down. Just have a little look through it now. So a hot desert environment provides opportunities and challenges for development to a large extent. I studied the Thar Desert, which is located on the border of Pakistan and India, would be a start, but you could give us some more detail. You could tell us what latitudes it's found at, for instance. One challenge people face there is, now then, what could we include? So you can come back to this later, but for now, let's look at what we're going to include on the challenges. This is from a couple of lessons ago, and we said there mainly sort of 4 challenges. There's the climate, the soil, the accessibility and the fact that it's isolated, and political and economic difficulties. What are the best 2 of those to include? Well, remember that you are trying to give detail. Therefore, I suggest you don't mention the political and economic difficulties, or you can mention them by all means, but don't make that your key challenge or one of your 2 key challenges. Definitely though, look, for climate we have a lot of detail because we know that how much rainfall there is and we know about the high temperatures, so you can give a lot of detail about climate. You definitely want to use that. The next one that I would use, I would probably mention both the soils and the accessibility, because when talking about soils, it makes me think about farming, and when thinking about opportunities in the Thar Desert, one of the big opportunities is actually farming. So although farming can be done badly and cause salinisation and desertification, it is also an opportunity. So I'm going to definitely include soils, and I think the accessibility is a good one to include if you've got time. So we've definitely got climate and soils, and accessibility is a maybe. On to the opportunities though. So I've included here the picture of the information that you used to construct your mind map last lesson. And at the top, there's the bit from the writing frame where it said one opportunity that people have found in the Thar Desert is something like they do at such a place. Describe and, oh yeah, right. So in this example, I've looked at the energy information and I've chosen coal, and I'm using as much information as I possibly can. One opportunity that people have found in the Thar Desert is that there are extensive lignite coal deposits, that's lifted straight from the source. In some areas, this can be mined and used in thermal energy plants, like they do at Giral. So I've described and I've given a place where it's happened. Now I'm going to link it to people. I'm going to say why it's a good opportunity. It's a good opportunity because it creates jobs for local people and because it means there is a supply of electricity which can be sold to create a profit for the local economy. Now, that wasn't in the textbook, but I've used my understanding, I've used my common sense and thought, well, they can't just, the coal isn't going to leap out of the ground, they have to employ some coal miners to go and get it. They have to employ some people at the energy plant. So there's definitely going to be some jobs, and when they create the electricity, it's for a purpose. It's to light people's homes. It's to keep the internet running in people's homes. It's to keep small shops running. It's to keep small restaurants and cafes running in the towns. Now, you can't have 2 things here and say that those are the two opportunities. You can definitely talk about, and you should talk about, at least a couple of these things as your one opportunity. So you can say one opportunity is the supply of energy, and then you could talk about coal and oil, coal and wind, wind and solar. You could even talk about all four of them. Now on this slide, I've put all the information that you had last lesson about the opportunities, but you might remember some more information, and you've probably got some in your notes from the video as well. So I suggest that what you do now is go back to the writing frame and sketch this out, plan it out, and then come back to this slide and the challenge slide to fill in the gaps in the writing frame. You'll definitely want to pause. Now, this should take you about 20 minutes, I would say. Finally, check your answer. Check it against the writing frame, make sure you haven't missed out a whole paragraph. Check it for detail, check your spelling, check that you've got place names. Have you described and explained? You could even read your answer aloud to make sure that it flows well. Sometimes when you've written something, you read it aloud, that's when you realise that you could have put it in a better way, or that, yes, that flows really well. Now you can either send this to your teacher or bring it to your next lesson. Either way, your teacher will want to see this. And in the not too distant future, this is exactly the sort of question that we'll be doing for your Year 9 exam. So this is a great chance to practice. In other words, what I'm saying is, don't just think, oh, I've watched the video, yeah, I get the idea. You also need to actually go through the process of writing your own answer. Right, so that is the end of this lesson. Like I say, you can either send that to your teacher or bring it to next class, and I'll hopefully see you next week. Really looking forward to it. Take care, everybody.